We have a guest. He's all the way from US, and the stuff which the things which is actually intruding me to him is that his works on sacred geometrical patterns, and from that he created a lot of things that could be a message from alternative reality, or that is something which we can relate in the dimension which we are living into right now. So how do you see your work, and what is your name,
My name's James Loeffner, also Jayadeva, as I grow into my authentic self. The way I utilize my work is as a means of expression, but also as a means of aligning myself with higher principles. And I find that the geometric form is really, really helpful for coherence when it comes to thought forms, because it's very, very succinct patterns. And then therefore, when I'm drawing this geometry, I find myself also coming into harmony with that geometry, and it leaves me feeling very aligned. Yeah.
So how do you see the sacred geometrical pattern? Whether you will feel it is already existing, that where you are becoming a medium, he is actually trying to transcend that whatever you are experimenting or experiencing into a piece of paper. How do you see, or you are creating something new? Is that your whether you can say that your intellect is being applied into creating this particular patterns and anything that sort, how do you see the things?
I like to see them as they come into form. So the cool thing about the geometry is that it always exists. It is from a higher dimension of space-time, it's from the collective human psyche, and it literally comes through our consciousness. And I'm pretty sure that these geometries are codes from the universe that have been inscripted down and channeled through human consciousness, and that they also imprint the nature around us. So I use these forms that already exist, but then I apply them in ways that are new. So that's how it kind of creates like a novelty effect in this case, because the geometry is ancient. I did not invent the geometry.
Yeah, exactly.
So
we can see that in the pyramids and
yes,
in the form of circles and stuff like that.
Mandalas and all the Celtic knots and the forms, they've been around for eons. And so to apply it to the modern age is to take something that has ancient form and then apply it with new methodologies, how we wish to see it showing up in our lives, how we wish to utilize it as a tool for evolution. All these factors kind of come into play with the making of the art, but also the looking at it. So when somebody is experiencing the art from an outside perspective, then they kind of get a little bit of a window into the mind of the creator, but then also into the mind of the higher creator of the geometry itself. And I believe that this geometry comes from a much higher source.
When we are saying that this is being used in ancient times, how did you got that particular knowledge? Whether you went into some kind of rituals where that it transcended you to connect to the ancient patterns, or you collected it from the books, or you heard it from somebody. Maybe in India we call the guy who transcended the sacred knowledge as guru. We respect him in that particular way. So how did you hear about that? Is that from books or friends? Or
it's a mix. I think Drunvalo Melchizedek's been a big influence.
Who?
He's a man. His name's Drunvalo Melchizedek. He wrote a book called The Ancient Teachings of the Flower of Life, or Ancient Secrets of the Flower of Life. And in this book is just a symposium of information on the heritage, the history of this particular fractal. And then I also have had my own revealing experiences through ayahuasca, which have showed me that this geometry itself is literally the fabric of space-time. And then there's another physicist by the name of Nassim Haramein, who has done a lot of research on the fractal field and the unified field theory, whereas he deduced the fact that literally space-time geometry is comprised of sacred geometry. It is what holds space together, the very fabric of space-time. And after having this experience with the ayahuasca, reading the book, and then also reading these theories, having them all come together, have been really monumental in my understanding that like this world that we live in is literally inhabited by higher dimensional geometries. And without them, it would literally just collapse. So it's holding everything together.
Okay, so you read the thing from the book first time, then you try to put it in the paper. Like, how did it start happen? Like, you know, or you try to tell to your friends. So look, hey, look, I found something new, and this is quite interesting. And how do they reflect on that particular thought? Maybe they may not be as much as evolved in their consciousness. When we are talking about the consciousness, maybe many people are not much evolved as what like, you know, what we collectively call as conscious being. Like there is a different level of evolution into the consciousness is actually existing, which we can actually see when we start to evolve in the world of consciousness, like, you know. So when you start to put this into the, you know, paper, how do people saw it, like, you know?
I think one of the connecting and unifying factors of sacred geometry that even to the layperson who doesn't know about its origins or the knowledge behind it is that it's beautiful. So I think humans have a tendency towards attraction towards what is beautiful when it comes to art especially. And so therefore when you see a sacred geometrical pattern or a mandala, for example, something that's really, really well designed and orchestrated, there's an intrinsic beauty. And the intrinsic beauty is attractive to anybody, not just somebody who knows. But somebody who knows, I think, can appreciate it even more deeply because they have not only the aesthetic quality, but then they understand the geometrical quality, they understand the spiritual qualities that are embedded within it. And perhaps also the intention of that carries through. So the intention of whoever is making the art, how they're presenting it to the world, has a certain lens that they want to portray it and or a certain way that they want to channel that. And then therefore those who are able to receive that message can, but even those who are not attuned to that level necessarily will still be awestruck by the beauty of these compositions because some of them are just mesmerizingly amazing. So you don't really need to know about it to appreciate it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, if we look more deep also, like each geometrical pattern, there is epsilon is there is pi is there, like, you know, or like 3.111. It's like, it's the numbers which are the way it is exponentially growing, the numbers itself is repeating. So for a mathematician also it will be like quite intruding, you know, also, like, you know. Yeah. To whom you have showed your first work?
My first work, wow, I don't even remember. It's been a long time. I started drawing in Germany, and it started just as a means to occupy my time when I would have free time. So I got a compass and a ruler and a protractor and all these mathematical, you know, geometrical tools, and that's really all you need to get started. So I would actually recommend that to anybody who's interested in playing with the patterns. It's pretty easy to start, and there's plenty of YouTube videos out there with instructions of how to get started. But I can't actually remember or tell you who I showed it to first. Probably just members of the community that I was living in.
In Germany.
Yeah, and we would have collective art sessions too, where people would come together, put their energy towards a project, draw, maybe create, do whatever. And I always find that an environment that is inclusive of other people's creativity expands that creativity almost exponentially. So, yeah.
So how many years you've been doing the sacred geometry now?
I would say ballpark figure maybe around 10. Yeah, but maybe more seriously for the past 6 years.
Past 6 years.
Yeah.
Have you done something really, you know, something like a very big sacred geometrical monument or something that sort?
Yeah, I have a few murals here in India, not big murals, but it was nice because 2022 was my first opportunity to come to India and then also have the opportunity to apply the geometry in public spaces. So there are a few hostels, one in Gokarna, a couple in Oroville that have my artwork up, and it's really cathartic to be able to paint in public and interact with the people, because it's like a joy shared is a joy amplified, and then also leaving a lasting imprint on the space, so that whoever comes into contact with it can maybe absorb some of this energy that's been left there. Yeah, so it's like leaving little talismans. Yeah.
And you're creating sacred geometrical jewelries also, right? Like
A little bit. With the jewelry, the symmetry is there. Maybe the recursive patterns of the sacred geometry is not so present. But I do like to apply, for example, Fibonacci steps in the sequencing.
okay.
So I will count, these numbered patterns and sequences to make sure that when the wire is spiraling, that it's like actually spiraling.
So that is in a Fibonacci sequence.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So you feel that this is actually accelerate that energy of that particular thing which you're making.
Yeah, I think it's one of the natural patterns of nature. So a lot of plant life follows Fibonacci.
Yeah, exactly.
Fire ratios and all these things. So when you apply it to art, then you get a really, really nice template to follow the flow of nature. So things have a tendency to take on a much more natural quality as such.
So let's imagine in this way, you are walking into a room which is fully decorated with a sacred geometrical pattern. Like maybe it is the simple sacred geometrical pattern, like seed of life or flower of life. You're going into that, or Metatron's cube or something that sort. You're just walking into this particular room, and which geometrical pattern will you get intruded into, or will get attracted to?
So lately I've been really mesmerized by it's almost like a seed of life, right? So seed of life is 7 circles concentric within each other. But this one also, instead of just doing a north and a south pole, like for the 6 circles around, this one includes an east and west. So there are 12 going around the sides. And this creates kind of like a vortex spiral or a torus field. And I've been really attracted to toroidal fields lately. It's kind of like an inverse donut where energy flows up and in and out and in. That's kind of the best model of a shape that I could give you. Is like if you would just imagine a donut and then energy flowing in and also out. This basic fractal kind of represents like a black hole, or other patterns in nature, like a sunflower is another example, how the seeds are just growing Fibonacci spirals out. This is the pattern at the moment that I feel is the most attractive to me. Yeah.
So how do you this pattern, which you got really attracted to, you would love to see it as a painting or a 3-dimensional artwork, or a building. Like in India, we call it as a sacredly correct architecture. We call it as Vastu. So if you look into this particular pattern, how do you feel, in which way you want to see it very more beautifully, whether it is as a painting, it is as a building, or it is as a township, where people are going in and out, where we are imagining like a black hole where people can go in and out, all the traffics are going in that particular direction. In which format would love to imagine this thing?
Yeah, I think I would like to see it like on a community level, for sure, like with the placement of the forms of the buildings, so that it kind of creates a space where there's energy flow between them, almost like ley lines, but like crafted that each like matrice of this particular geometry, like the roads are spiraling into the spaces. And there's a few communities in Europe that kind of apply this idea into their infrastructure. Tamara is one of them. They have like a big seed of life, like in their garden. Their garden is the shape of that geometry. So like when you're flying above or like taking a picture, you can literally see sacred geometry implemented into their landscaping, into their architecture. And for this particular pattern that I really like, there's a group of people from the west coast of the USA called Trillium Domes, and they're working with geodesic structures, which are also kind of like a Buckminster Fuller invention. that is a very, very, very strong structure using geometry, sacred geometry especially. But this particular design they have is called a zome. And it is literally almost like a pine cone spiraling up to a point. And it has like a flower of about 8 to 12 points on the top, and then it spins down in a spiral. So when I have never been in one personally, but I would love to build one. I would love to live in one, because I could imagine that sitting in there, this energy channel is like vortexing automatically, like the pyramids, for example. But in this case, even more so, because it already has a natural twist to the architecture. So if you just sit and meditate, then etheric energy is just going to amass, spiral, and then eventually skyrocket out the top. So this is my future plan for a home. I will totally live in one of these one day.
Okay.
Yeah, the plans are there. I'll do some shameless advertisement for them. They do really amazing work. Yeah, for sure.
And when we're talking about the sacred geometry, I think the seed of life and the flower of life, which is actually first appeared into the the Bible of Jews, I guess, like Kabbalah and things like that, like so also if we look into India, there are sacred geometry patterns which are in the form of yantras, like we call it as yantras. So do you feel any relationship between these two? I don't know whether exactly you studied about yantras or how far you went into the yantras and mandalas. Especially mandalas are from Buddhism and yantras are from Hinduism. How far you went into, like so how do you see? Because I feel like this Jewish people has a seed of life, flower of life, and in India Hindus has this yantras, and Buddhas has this mandalas. This is a common way where we can actually really visualize the consciousness which all these people are talking about is actually really one. See, this geometrically all these things are coming together. In that sense, where do you see the how do you see the thing in mandalas and yantras?
It feels like a progression, like an evolution of geometry. As like society evolves, or as humanity evolves, and we unlock higher codes within our being, then we're granted higher access to more patterns, more geometries, and they're all there, and they've always been there. And I just think that with each particular age of evolution, the right downloads are coming. So for example, from Hinduism, the yantra, like the living abode of the deity, right? And that's constructed in their temples as well. And I like that they found a way to really physically apply that, not just from a form of a plan, because like the geometries, it's the framework, right? It holds the framework, and then from there you can build upon it. And then also when it comes to like the further evolution, mandala and just the meditation that comes with that. Yeah, so then not only do you have the physical form holding it, but then the mandala is like holding the mental form, like still. So there's an evolution there too into mind. And then this next wave, like flower of life, for example, all these things, they say that they're pretty ancient, and at the same time, to me, it feels relatively like new age, I would say. But when you get to this level of geometry, kind of being the framework of space-time itself, then it has a higher constitution as well. So not only is it like represented in symbology in the material world as we see it, but it's also holding a higher constituents in its very essence on the space-time continuum. So and that's so fascinating to me. And I'm interested what the connections of them actually are, because they feel also in a way very distinct. So yantra has a framework, right? They have their gates, they have their temples, they have their bindu and all the different attributes of each individual deity. Sacred geometry itself, maybe with Metatron's cube exceptions, like that's attributed to a specific entity, right? Like the scribe of the heavens, which was Enoch in the Bible. Yeah, that's a curious one. I was gifted a vision once. I was at a festival talking with some friends, and I happened to be, my layers were peeled back from some psilocybin. I'd taken mushrooms, and we were talking about Metatron's cube. And what came through in that particular channeling was that Metatron's cube, as we see it in the third dimension, is a template, but it contains the matrices of the higher framework. And since Enoch or Metatron is the heavenly scribe, supposedly, in mythology, the cube is the geometry that codifies the space-time. So within that cube, you can find every single dimension of geometry. You can find almost every platonic solid. So it contains within itself the blueprints of reality and also the inscriptions of the heavens. And so that three-dimensional rendition of a higher fifth-dimensional matrix that it actually is just what we're able to see here. But really the thing is like metamorphic, right? It's moving, it's changing, it's spinning like the Merkaba itself. Very, very powerful geometry. Yeah, and it's a beautiful symbol. It contains the flower of David, so like you said, the Jewish geometry is there. It contains also the tree of life, the fruit of life, so Kabbalah is there. The flower of life is there, the seed of life is there, and it's all just stacked on itself, compressed, very dense. And it was nice to unpack that a little bit, because if you just glance at it, yes, it's a pretty symbol, but if you really start to look into what it contains, so much information is there.
Do you see any relationship between the mandalas and the, where we can visually see, like, anything?
Well, the beauty of mandala is that it's...
mandalas, yantras, and the Jewish, or the sacred geometries from the West, do you see any similarities? Because this yantras and mandalas is Eastern philosophy.
Yes.
The sacred geometry is actually Western philosophy.
Yes.
So are we seeing any similarities in this?
Yeah, the bridge, especially with this Star of David pattern, like it's in the yantra, it's in the mandala, it's in the geometry of Metatron, like maybe that is a bridge, which is interesting because that symbol itself, you could call it Star of David, but you could also call it Shakona, right, which is the heart chakra symbol. So it is actually blatantly placed in Anahata chakra because the one triangle pointing down is the feminine principle, and then the interpenetrating triangle up is the masculine. So therefore you have your link to Tantra in the heart chakra, and then also the bridge, which the heart is actually the bridge between the lower and the higher chakras as well. That is also the cultural bridge between yantra, mandala, and sacred geometry. So I think this is a very powerful representation that they are all indeed fully connected. And it has to be through the heart, right? How else are we all
exactly. Within that, there is nothing. See, the thing is are we really, see, the Rumi has said the eyes are given to those who can see. I mean, beautiful things are for the beautiful eyes. Okay.
Yeah, maybe some people just see it as a pattern, and other people see it as as a way of life, or as artwork, or like something formidable.
So you have your work with you. Can we show and
yeah, for sure. So let's see. Since we're talking about yantra and mandal, this one I drew this morning. I don't know if the camera can get it, but we will place it there. So this is a potential tattoo design. I'm working for a friend. Maybe not a finished design, but this is Muladhara, so that's root chakra. It's 4 petals. Each chakra has a certain amount of petals. It has a certain bija mantra. And these could also be considered yantra, I would say. So they, each have their own kind of pattern and symbol and energy, frequency, usually color. I like to work in black and white, but and then the background here is what you call a recursive pattern. So that's a fractal. It can go in infinite directions. I kind of contained it within a box just to give it some shape and form and a little play with elements, but I don't actually know the name of this particular pattern, but I like playing with it. It uses a 60-30 angle geometry, which is also what holds like a cube together. So what's interesting is that a cube fits perfectly inside a hexagon, and that's just stacking layers of platonic solids in this case, just expressed as different forms. Let's see what else we want to show. All right, so let me find a better version of that one. So this is when we were talking about the room of sacred geometry. What particular pattern attracts me? This is this 12 circled, it's basically a seed of life doubled on itself.
Okay.
So what that does, instead of it being just the normal seed, it pulls everything into the center and it pushes everything back out. So this actually creates a certain level of a torus when it's within the circle. But then you can also make it into a flower. So then you can turn it into mandala very, very, very easily.
Okay, there is a connection. Yeah.
Definitely. So, and mandala is beautiful because you can pick any number of sides in the middle. You also have that with the Rangalis and also the Indian culture drawing it on the doorsteps. Maybe not necessarily the same pattern, but also definitely very culturally present in India, especially in the south. So here you have a makeshift Metatron's cube. It's a little edited. And what's interesting about the Metatron's cube is that it contains within it this 13 circle pattern, and that's called the fruit of life. So technically, flower of life, 17 circles interlocking, and then each one overlaps each other. But within those 17 circles, the 13 circles of the core represent the fruit. So it's funny because you go from the seed, and then the seed grows into the fruit, or the tree actually next, and then the tree grows into the fruit. So you have this whole life process going on. And there's also an interesting correlation between this particular circle geometry and the cell division, right? So yeah, it's a pretty fantastic process. Life and gestation. Let's see. Oh yeah, I'll share one other little thing. If I can find it. Oh, okay. Well, that one you might recognize in the middle. It's Sri Yantra without the gates. So kind of instead made into a mandala. But this one's pure dots, so it's like a pointillistic perspective. It creates the illusion of lines. And I really...
You made it by hand, Sri Yandra, because particularly Sri Yandra is very hard to create. Even though we are using the softwares, there is little dots are missing. If we zoom into the geometrical pattern, there will be little unjoining between some lines will be there, like even if we are using software also, like CAD or whatever, like how precise this is, like.
So I found online, and I'll have to research the name again of the woman. She teaches a class on Sri Yantra, how to draw. And she does it freehand sometimes just to practice, but she also had studied with somebody in India who's world-renowned for drawing Sri Yantra. And he gave her a mathematical equation of dividing the space between the 2 points into 48 millimeters. And then from the 48 millimeters, each particular cross line lies on a particular number that's very, very random. So it can be 6 millimeters up, and then it could be 6.1. Then it could be 5.9, but the math is precise. And when you follow that math to a T, then you get precision lines. And it's the only one I found on the internet that addresses that problem, because otherwise, if you just try to do it randomly, you're gonna have the lines not meeting. So I'll cross-reference, I'll get you her name, maybe you can put it out for anybody who's interested in learning how to draw it, because it's really fascinating and meditative, like drawing this pattern.
Sri Yandra is the absolute,
And then there's just one more topic to bring up while we're here. So you can show them that one. That one is just basically a mandala, but the inner workings here, this is a three-dimensional mathematical concept called impossible geometry.
Okay.
And this is really fun stuff because this shape could not exist in physical reality, but since you're able to create optical illusion on paper, you have these twists and turns, whereas one item is going under and then over and then twisting in ways that would be like a tangled mess in reality. So there's a whole world of optical illusions that exist in the realm of impossible geometry that I really recommend checking out, because it can literally bend your mind into a higher space. Because you look at it one way and then you look at it another way and it changes. And it's never static. So you can follow that flow for infinity within itself. And it's just a really beautiful way to explore and expand the consciousness, because it tricks your mind into thinking it's something it's not.
Yeah, exactly. That is how we know what is not existing, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know.
It's been a really big source of inspiration. For sure. Yeah.
So, anything else you want to show?
Let's see. Oop. I wish I had my other book with me. One more thing.
The moon circle.
Yeah, so this was drawn on the day of the solar eclipse. Recently, we had a new moon and a solar eclipse on the same day. Very potent portal energy. And I just felt inspired to kind of do a little mandala and also track the moon phases. So in this case, normally I would put the full moon on the top, but since in this case, on this day, the new moon eclipsed the sun, it goes through the full cycle, and then the eye is like the portal that the moon created when it eclipsed the sun. So I thought that was a really interesting coincidence. I'm not sure if on every solar eclipse it's a new moon day, or if that just happened to be that day, but it felt very auspicious. Yeah, and wow, I had a really, really beautiful meditation in the ashram that morning. Very, very lightful energy coming through. I could feel a big shift happening from the earth, and it was nice because on that day everybody seemed to take time just to still. And this was only in the US, like you could actually see it, but I could feel the energy here, even in India, that this eclipse is happening, that the earth is shifting, new energy is coming. It's a day of really heavy like solar activity and flares. So the earth is going to be bombarded with solar wind and gamma rays, well, maybe not gamma rays, but neutrinos, all sorts of energy coming from the sun in this case. Very, very, very nice day.
So if somebody we have gone through most of your work, and we have shared the visions about the sacred geometry and most of its principles. If somebody want to connect to you, like, you know, if somebody want to receive something from you, or if somebody is interested to know how to progress in the spiritual path with the help of sacred geometry or anything that sort, how they can do that, how they can write to you, how they can reach out to you?
I guess maybe Instagram would be a way. I'm also open for email, kind of old school like that. I do have a Facebook, but not a website yet at the moment, so I don't have anything really posted online, like in one particular hub or place. Maybe that's an inspiration for the future. Yeah, for sure. Somewhere to like put collected works, past, present, future, maybe a marketplace, something like this. Yeah, generally, I have been selling a few works. So I am open for custom work or tattoo design or things like this. I'm very happy to co-create with people when they have ideas. And this is an endeavor, I think, that it's kind of taking the direction more towards like, yeah, getting this art in a way that's like being able to be represented by people and enjoyed by a wider audience. So yeah, I can definitely give you some links.
Like if anybody who is listening to our podcast, like, you know, if they want to write to you, like, you know, can you tell your email ID, like, or your Instagram ID where people can So you are open to the collaborative options also, where some tattoo artists want to do design some tattoos, or some people want to receive some tattoos from you, which they can print on their body or some certain part of body parts or whatever. So in that case, where they can write to you, like email ID. You can tell, like,
my email address is Kemetic Effect, so that's KEMETIC, all one word, EFFECT, same word together, at gmail.com.
And Insta?
Insta, elevate, meditate, levitate. And then the eights are actually numbers.
Okay.
So ELEV 8, number, MEDIT 8, and then LEVIT 8.
Okay.
Elevate, levitate.
Okay.
Elevate, meditate, levitate.
Fantastic. Yeah. Anything else you want to tell to anybody who's listening to?
Yeah, thank you for listening. And if you have an interest in geometry or life in general, or just feel like reaching out, I'm happy to connect. Happy to share the love of inspiration and passion with the world. And I'm always interested in having nice, deep conversations with interesting people. So feel free to reach out. Very happy to entertain.
Yeah.
Yes.